Good morning. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Abby and this is Handmaker Haven Homestead. Today's video, if you cannot tell by the title, we are doing a what I learned from the 2024 homestead year. Now, a lot of people do like what I learned in the garden and whatever, but I did a heck of a lot of stuff this year, so I am wrapping it all into one. Now, I have my computer here because I have everything written down. So if I'm looking down, that's why I'll put it up here. But I have a couple of disclaimers. Now, number one, I'm going to talk a lot about other videos that are going to be coming in the future. So a lot of those obviously aren't here yet. If I do already have a video about certain things, I will share that and I will link that down below. But a lot of these videos I'm planning to come out with in the next couple months here. I took about a month off. I had some personal things going on and the holidays were happening, so it was kind of crazy. But hopefully I'm back to filming one video a week, and they will be released on Saturday morning, afternoons-ish. A couple other little things to just get out of the way. So a lot of my fails that I'm going to talk about today I have not found solutions yet. I have ideas and stuff, but there are certain things that I have not gotten to that point in my planning. So a lot of this is just going to be, hey, this happened in 2024. This was a fail. But in my 2025 video will be coming out hopefully in the next couple of weeks about my garden plan and homestead plan for 2025. I will hopefully share some of those solutions that I came up with, so don't feel like, oh, she's just telling us how she failed all the time and not gonna give us any solutions. A lot of people also may have similar problems. Also, my boyfriend so lovingly got me a microphone for Christmas. I am not used to it, so if the quality sounds really weird or if I touch the mic a lot on accident, I'm really sorry. I will try to minimize that as much as I can, but that might happen. Before this year, the only thing that I had in all of my categories was a garden, and which means I added a lot of stuff this year. I did a lot of stuff this year, and I'm homesteading on my parents' property. They are funding, I would say, maybe a third of the things that I'm doing. The rest of it I have fully paid for, with the exception of things that are theirs. So for example, the fruit trees, that was something that I did, but when I move out, I'm not going to dig up the fruit trees, like they're going to stay here. But for something like the bees, that has nothing to do with them, so that's all me. I paid for all of those things. So not only am I doing it on their land, but also they have paid for some of it. They have said that I did way too much, which I would agree. I definitely think that I did too much, and there were certain things that I was not able to do super well because I did so much. But what I will say is, aside from my parents' feelings, I would 100% do it the exact same way again. Now, I would kick my butt into gear a little bit more and not be so lazy on certain days and actually do more. But I wouldn't necessarily have taken anything away. I just probably would have been a little bit more productive, a little bit more efficient. So because of that, I'm not going to beat myself up and say, oh, well, this thing kind of failed this year because I didn't do this. Yes, but also I can look at it and say, wow, I did a lot of stuff. This video is going to be laid out into different categories. I will have them hopefully as chapters, if I can figure out how to do that, hopefully as chapters down below, so you can go to any of the chapters of different subjects that you want to know about. When I say last year, I mean 2023. So I'm talking about the 2024 season. When I say as opposed to last year, I'm going to be talking about the 2023 garden, even though we are in 2025, I know, but that is what that means. So just getting right into it. First, we are going to start with the orchard. So this year, I really wanted to put in an orchard. We live in zone 6A, so there are certain things that obviously cannot be grown in here, up here, so we can't grow like tropical fruits and bananas and lemons and whatever. We had some other things that were really good that we are able to grow. So this year, I put up cattle panel fencing. The fencing, me and my mom, and then me and my friend Caitlin, we put up the fencing. It was super hard. I may have gotten hurt 1 or 2 times, but it was okay. So we figured it out. So that was a big win. A lot of my wins were just infrastructure being built this year. So next year, some of my fails, I guess, will not be the case because the infrastructure is already built. So for the orchard, I put up the fencing. I got my trees planted. We had one apple tree out there already. And then we got, I believe, like 12 or 13 more trees. We got apples, pears, plums, and peaches. And then I put in some Concord grapevines and blueberry bushes. So that is what we grew as far as like fruit in the orchard. I also got them mulched, which was kind of not a huge deal, but it was one thing that just needed to happen. And then also in the orchard, I planted sunflowers that were beautiful. I will try to see if I have any pictures. I don't really think that I have many from the sunflowers, but they were really nice. I'm definitely going to be growing them there next summer. And I also planted some little hills of squash and watermelon. So for the watermelon, one whole plant came up, and I did not keep the area weeded. So I only got one plant and it kind of got choked out, but also I planted those things late in the season. Like I planted them the end of June, beginning of July, and squash and watermelon really need a long time to be able to mature to put on fruit. So winter squash, not summer squash. They kind of didn't produce. I got one tiny little watermelon that was this big that rotted, and then I got one, it looked like the top of a butternut squash, and it was like this big. It's down in our basement actually for us to eat, but that was really it as far as squash. A lot of my issues this year were self-inflicted, and I will get to that in a minute. This past October or November, I think it was, I went through and I planted my garlic in the orchard. So I planted them in around the mulch, on the outside of the mulch around the fruit trees. So I've heard that it's really good to plant garlic in fruit orchards. My mom's parents' house used to actually be a big fruit orchard, and you can find garlic all over their property because of this, because they interplant or companion plant garlic with fruit trees to keep away pests and animals. So that is it for the orchard. Now I'm going to go into the kind of big mistakes that I made this year. And all of these you're going to be like, well, duh, of course you didn't do great this year. But I'm just going to share them. These are for both the orchard and the garden. That's why I'm kind of saying them in the middle. So number one, weeding. I had a couple different reasons for this. One of them was I was just lazy. Another one was plants got planted out a bit too late. So because of that, certain weeds had time to grow before the plants could really take up the space. And I had so many other things that I was doing that it just kind of took over. Another issue was I was gone for a lot of the summer. I took like 2 or 3 different weeks of vacation with different groups. I was at summer camp for 3 weeks. So that kind of affected it a lot, where I was not able to keep up on some of those daily or weekly tasks that should have happened. And on top of that, I also like have a job and, other stuff that I'm doing. So that was a huge thing that I think definitely affected my garden. Another really big thing was watering. So for fruit trees, they say that for the first like 2 to 3 years, you really need to keep them consistently watered. And that was kind of a fail. I did not do very well with that. I have some ideas as to how I'm going to remedy that this year, but they did not get a ton of water and they're kind of in direct sun. So they didn't die, but they probably didn't do as well as they could have had I watered better. And the same thing goes for my garden. I really struggled to water them. Part of it was because I was lazy, part of it was because I was gone. And the biggest part is the garden is kind of far away from my house. Not like super far, but it's kind of far away from the hose. And especially with like those heavy duty hoses, you have to drag them all the way down. And, I have to move them like once a week at least so that my dad can mow. And it's just like this whole big thing. So I probably should have been watering in July and August. I probably should have been watering at least every day, if not every other day, and I would maybe water once a week. That definitely affected things a lot. I'm hoping to maybe figure some of those things out next year. I don't think that I'm going to do drip irrigation. I feel like that's going to be way too much for me, but I could see myself maybe just installing like a couple sprinklers along the garden so that I can just go out and turn them on and it will sprinkle everything. I don't know how that will work with certain things like tomatoes, which don't love for their leaves to be wet all the time. But that's another one of those things that I will tell you guys when I figure it out. But watering was another really big fault of mine this year. Another really big issue was deer. So we have lots of deer. I could probably look outside my window right now and count like 6 or 7 just in the back like meadow that my neighbor has. And they completely just hopped the fence. I have a 50-inch fence, which is a little over 4 feet, that I would come out there and they would have hopped the fence. They at one point chewed down all of my tomato plants. They chewed down all of my green beans. So that was a huge issue. Now, how my garden is laid out, there was kind of space at the top and space at the bottom. And this year I'm going to be building stuff at the top, and I'm hoping that at the bottom I will be able to figure something out that they're less likely to just jump over, because if there's a smaller amount of space, they may not feel as comfortable to just jump right in. So that was a big issue. I believe they were also in the orchard chewing off buds. So that's a bigger thing that I don't know exactly how I'm going to remedy. So if you have any ideas, I would love to hear them. But deer was a big issue. And then the last thing that was a really big fail of mine this year was things got planted out super late. And I mean like the end of June, beginning of July. So like a month to a month and a half later than things should be planted in our area. And like I said, a lot of that was just because I had so many other things that I was doing, and like I had to wait for pallets to be delivered here to build my raised beds, and then I had to wait for someone else to drop off the fencing. So there were a lot of things that I was just waiting on, but a lot of it was also I was very overwhelmed and I was like, well, I don't know where to start, so I'm just not going to start, which is a big character flaw that I need to work on. But things did not get planted out till pretty late. Now, a lot of things still did really well and kind of were affected by those other 3 reasons that I gave. But I think that I would have had a much more prolific season had I planted things out in May when they should have been. So, all that to say, let's talk about the good things for my garden in 2024. So, I have kind of come up with a plan, almost sort of. So, you're always learning in gardening, obviously, but I think that instead of me being like, hey, I'm going to pick 10 crops, I'm going to pick 10 crops and I'm going to learn everything that I can about those 10 crops. And then the next year, maybe I'll add on 5 or whatever. Instead of doing that, I have kind of moved my focus towards I'm going to focus every year on a new side of all of the crops. So in 2024, for example, that was companion planting. So I spent hours and hours and hours researching all the best companion plants for the things that I wanted to grow, and I will make a video about that eventually. But that I think really helped to kind of not overwhelm me a lot. So there were certain things that did not do as great, but I know going forward, I now have all the information whenever I go to plant my garden and just head knowledge of, hey, this thing grows well with this thing, but it really shouldn't be planted with this thing. So that was very good for this year. Some other examples of things like that for this year, I'm really focusing on succession planting to be able to get the most out of the time that I have. So I will talk all about that in my 2025 garden plan video, but that is a big thing. Another thing that I will probably focus on in another year would be like my soil health and the conditions that certain plants really like and don't like. So I think that by layering on those different things, it will help me to kind of have a basis of knowledge that is better for my brain to work with. So that was a big thing that I did this year, and I think that it helped a lot. So 4 things that happened in the garden. Number 1, I got 10 yards of dirt from my church. They were clearing out an area, a bank, and it was beautiful dirt, like very, very nice dirt. It was just leaves that had been thrown there for years, like 10 years, and had all broken down, and it's beautiful golden dirt, but there were a lot of chunks in it. So over the course of about a month or two, I had to hand sift 10 yards of dirt. And if you don't know how big 10 yards of dirt is, it's a lot. So that was a really big issue. And not only that, I then had to wheelbarrow that dirt all the way down to the garden and put it into where it went. So that was one thing that took a really long time. After that dirt was sifted, I decided to buy some from someone locally off of Facebook Marketplace, which the dirt was good. The only issue is I found in all of the dirt that I got from that person, it had a really invasive weed. I'm not sure what the name of it is, but it had this really invasive weed that had this big stalk. It was easy to pull, but there was so much of it. And it had this big stalk and this like purple flower that almost looked like a morning glory. And it produced these big seed pods. So last year, I kind of went through and was trying to pull them out as much as I could. And this year, I'm really hoping that I can get on top of that in early spring and early summer to clear all of those out, because I really do not want that invasive plant spreading over our entire, garden and orchard and whatever, or yard. So that was kind of a bummer. I also put up the fencing. As far as infrastructure, I put up the fencing and I built some raised beds, which I will show you in another video. I put up the arch trellises. And when I say I mean other people helped me. So, I had some kids from youth group help me put up the fencing and sift the dirt. Sam helped me do the arch trellises. Caitlin helped me do the raised beds. So it's kind of a group effort, but either way, I was involved in all of it. So when I say I, but that was a big thing that I did this year. Some wins were I started almost all of my own plants from seed in my house, which was super cool. And I also had enough to sell at the farm stand, which I will talk about in a minute. And speaking of seeds, I also was able to save a lot of my own seeds this year. So I've done that in the past for certain things, like whenever we get our fall pumpkins, I'll try and save the seeds and then plant them next year. But I was able to do that with a lot more, and also with some varieties that I grew in my own backyard. So my Roma tomatoes I did that with, zinnias, cosmos, snapdragons, lots of things. That is a big win, and I'm hoping to eventually get to the point where I don't have to buy new seeds every year. I can only buy like new varieties that I want to try, but I can kind of recycle the seeds that I have, and then also hopefully maybe sell seeds to other people. I don't know if I'm quite at that point yet, but that would be the hope. I did not mulch enough, which I think that that kind of contributed to the weed problem and to the watering problem, because if things were mulched a little bit better, then weeds wouldn't have been as prevalent and they wouldn't have needed to be watered as much. As far as the foods that I actually grew, my staple foods that I have grown the last few years did pretty well. A lot of my issues were with trellising. So like my tomatoes, I did not trellis, and I also did not prune them as well as they should have. So that was a big thing. But part of that was because I had so many tomato plants. I think that if I have less tomato plants and take care of them a little bit better, that I will be able to actually have a higher yield. Overall, they did pretty well. I still got a big harvest. Same with my cucumbers. My flowers did okay. Certain flowers did not do great, but most of them did pretty good. My zucchini did really well until I believe it got powdery mildew and it died, but that's okay. So most things that I've done before did well. Some things that I've done before that did not do well, that did well this year, was my peppers. My peppers got really, really bushy. I believe it's because I started them earlier. My only issue was I think I didn't space them out enough. I think that they were kind of overcrowded a little bit, and so some of them didn't put on as much fruit as I probably would have liked. But this year I am going to be putting them into a different bed and not having as many. I also, if you remember from my overwintering peppers video, which I will link down below, I potted a lot of my peppers. So I have 10 pepper plants that will go in the ground that are already a year old. So hopefully that will kind of help to give me almost a bumper crop of peppers. Peppers, lettuce, I have done lettuce before and I almost never did it again because I did it one year. I can't remember if I did it from seed or if I bought it in like a package, but I planted it in the middle of the summer, which, if you don't know, lettuce is a cool weather crop. So it got very bitter in the summer. It was just not good. So this year I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to plant it in the cooler seasons. And I'm also, when it's in the sun or in the summer, I'm going to hopefully get a shade cloth for it so that we can have greens all year round. Some new varieties that I grew were carrots. They did pretty well. Again, those are a cool season crop, and I didn't really know that. So they probably didn't get as big as they would have if I had done them either in the spring or the fall. But another thing that I grew that did really well that was new were beets and radishes. I also grew quite a few new herbs, specifically perennial herbs. I wanted to really establish some good perennial herb plants, so I did rosemary and thyme and oregano and sage. And my fails, my strawberries. I bought bare root strawberries from Burpee last spring, and they send them to you when you are supposed to plant them, which is so smart. But me, being me, was like, I know better and I'm just going to wait to plant them, which would have been fine if I had opened the package. But instead, I left them in the package until it was time to plant them, which for me was the middle or end of June. And they're supposed to be planted in like March. So I planted them, and not a single one of them came up because they were completely rotted. Like, I don't even know why I bothered planting them because they were 100% completely rotted. So that was a big fail. I should have planted them whenever I got them. I didn't realize that they could be planted even in the winter when it was cold. So that is something that I'm going to do differently this year. I got more bare root strawberries and I'm going to plant them the right way. Another fail was spinach. I still have no idea what happened. I had a whole package of spinach. I planted it right next to my lettuce at the same time of my lettuce, and not a single one grew. So I have no idea what happened. My lettuce this year did great. So we were kind of able to eat it all season. So I don't really know what happened with that. Rhubarb, I got a rhubarb plant from my grandmother, and I planted it down in the garden, in the ground, not in a raised bed. And some type of animal either dug it up or tried to dig it up or something. I went down there one day and it was like completely gone, and I gave up. It was like in the middle of trying to plant everything. I gave up. I was like, I'll grow it another year in another space. I still don't know what happened, but we also don't eat rhubarb that much, and if we do, we have like friends and family who have rhubarb plants. Also, my celery was good and bad. A lot of people don't grow celery, which you have to start it pretty early, but it was great. Like, it looked beautiful in the early like summer. It was delicious. Now, they say that whenever you don't water your celery, it gets bitter. And again, we already know that I did not do a great job of watering. So it got very bitter, but I had a huge bed of it, which was super disappointing that it kind of all just got bitter and died. But I think that with watering that next year, I think that I will kind of negate that issue. And the last one was radishes. They did they did well. I did a couple succession plantings of them, but I think the big issue was that number one, I didn't water enough, and number two, I did not thin them out enough. So with radishes, you kind of just plant them in a row, and then you have to go through and pick out so that there's enough space for the radishes to grow. And I didn't do that as much, so I kind of got pretty small radishes, which was a bummer, but it was okay. Now, moving on to the farm stand. So the farm stand, I had very big aspirations at the beginning of last year, and I was like, on May 1st, I'm going to open it and it's going to be full all summer long. That did not happen. We didn't even start building it till the middle of May. We got a platform from someone's scrapyard. They just had a platform that we screwed together. So that was kind of a fail. And my boyfriend, Sam, he has his own construction business. And I was not going to build it by myself. And he kind of wanted to be the one that did it. So there were a lot of things that I just had to wait and whatever. So the hope is to have it opened this spring, but I'm not exactly sure how that's going to go. There have been some issues with it that I will get into in a later video, but the hope is to have it opened in May and hopefully have it stocked for the summer. I have a lot of ideas about it, but that's where that's at right now. So for my bees, I became a beekeeper this year. That was so fun. It was very rewarding. A friend of mine from church, he kind of took me under his wing, no pun intended, teaching me how to keep bees. He called me one day and said, "Hey, I have a swarm. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Sure." So I set up my electric fence all by myself. I was very proud of myself for doing that all by myself. And I was able to set it up, and get my bees installed. So I was able to find most of my equipment, like my boxes and frames and such, off Marketplace or from my beekeeper friend. He gave me a lot of stuff, which was very kind of him. I started out with one hive. I could tell that the hive was really good. There were some queen cells, and so we actually ended up splitting the hive into two hives, and then they did pretty well throughout the summer. I got about a gallon of honey, which was pretty good for my first year. I was also able to render down some beeswax. Now, this is not, whoops, that's the dirty side. This is not all from my bees. A lot of this, the majority of this was from my beekeeper friend. He gave me some, but I rendered it all down together just so that I had one big block. But that was super fun to learn how to render down beeswax. So I had two hives. They were doing pretty good. The one that had been split from the original hive was not doing too great, and I'm pretty sure by the end of the season, I'm pretty sure their queen died. I know that there was a queen in there because I saw her, but I'm pretty sure that she died or something happened because the hive just got smaller and smaller. So I ended up combining them again. So right now I only have one hive out there. That's fine. I think this year hopefully I might get a couple more hives. Next is the chickens. I don't really talk about our chickens all that much because that's more, number one, we got them in 2023, but number two, they're kind of like a more of a family thing than they are a me thing, even though I was the one that pushed for them. We have 9 chickens. We used to have 12, and then we got a rooster, so we had 13. And then 3 of the hens got eaten or killed by animals, and we had to kill our rooster, sadly. Sorry. We had to cull him, technically. The reason for that was he was getting very aggressive. Now, I've heard that some roosters are way more aggressive than he was, but I'm a nanny, so I have 3 small children here almost every day during the summer, and my brother, he's here, and so it was just not safe to have a rooster who would very willingly attack anybody that got close to him. And one day he attacked my dad like 2 or 3 times, like full on trying to get him with his claws. And my dad was like, okay. And he called the neighbor, and the neighbor kindly took care of him for us. So now we have 9 hens. Hopefully, we won't lose any more. I don't, my mom's kind of over the whole chicken thing, so I kind of doubt that we're going to get any more, but maybe we will. Maybe if someone's like, hey, we have this fully grown chicken, do you want it? She'll be like, yeah, but I kind of doubt it. So for now, we have 9 hens. And as far as the actual infrastructure down there, me and my mom and my dad, we built a lean-to, which I will show you in the farm tour video. But we built a little lean-to to just kind of protect them from the elements when they're out in the run. We also painted the coop, and we replaced the doors, the egg collection doors. They were kind of rotting out and gross. So we replaced those. I also put up a gutter. My hope was to make like a rain barrel system and then feed that rain barrel to the watering bucket, or actually feed it, like come up with a new water system. We kind of need to figure out a new food and water system because ours is just like 5-gallon buckets down there. But I was able to install the actual gutter. So as of right now, it's literally just a gutter with a downspout that comes off the side, which is fine. It moves all the water so that it's not like super muddy everywhere. It's just muddy in some parts. But that was one thing that we did this year. Now, moving on to food preservation. So this is the last category that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to just kind of go over a couple things. Now, number one, as far as food preservation, I'm going to talk about the new equipment that we got. So number one, the biggest thing would be we got a freeze dryer, a pretty big investment. You can look into them. we were able to purchase a Harvest Right freeze dryer. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of preserving food. So that was one big thing that we bought. Another big thing that we bought was a chest freezer. So my mom's side of the family are all very big hunters, and so we were able to get 4 deer this year, which is a lot. I don't know how equivalent it would be to like half a cow or to a cow, but it was quite a bit of meat. We did not have room to store it in our freezer. I've also been asking to get a chest freezer for a long time just so that I could maybe up my game. We also got a new fridge in our kitchen because we were planning to remodel our kitchen. So I convinced my parents to keep our other fridge freezer. So right now in our garage, we have another fridge freezer that is empty, and it's unplugged. But during the heat of the summer, when I have produce coming in that needs to be refrigerated, I have a place to put it. And we also have a little bit extra freezer space. So that is really nice. A couple other little things that I bought were I got a steam juicer, which I absolutely love. I got a steam canner for Christmas, which I have not tried yet. I will probably make a video of me trying it for the first time. Like I said, we were able to get 4 deer. It was right around like 200 pounds, I think, of meat, which was really great for us. Hopefully, in the next couple of years, we might buy chickens from like a local farm in bulk, and we have the space for it now, so that's very nice. I also froze quite a few fruits and vegetables. As far as canning, I canned a bunch of applesauce. I bought I think it was like 6 or 7 bushels of apples from our local farm, and I was able to can 50 jars for us, and then I believe I sold like another 40 jars of applesauce, which is crazy. I also canned quite a few pickled things. So I did pickled beets for the first time, which were very good. Bread and butter pickles. I did a lot of refrigerator pickles. I didn't can too many dill pickles, or I don't think that I canned any dill pickles. I also canned lots of jams and sauces. I found a pizza sauce and a marinara sauce that I really like, and I will definitely be using in the future. I also made a bunch of fruit juices with my steam juicer. Like I said, I did apple juice, I did grape juice. Earlier, before I got my steam juicer, I did cranberry juice, which was very good. As far as freeze drying, I freeze dried quite a few herbs, which was really nice. That's one of the things that I really want to use my freeze dryer for is herbs, so that we don't have to buy them from the store. So like I did a lot of parsley, basil, oregano, stuff like that. And dill, I did a lot of dill. I also did quite a few teas, so mostly mint. I have quite a few different varieties of mint, so I freeze dried a bunch of that for me to use in teas. I also freeze dried fruit, so I did like 4 gallons of strawberries. I think like 2 or 3 gallons of apples. The last thing was I started doing freeze dried candy. I've actually been selling it locally. I believe that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and you can like and subscribe down below and leave me a comment for any videos that you want to see. I believe that's all. So I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.